Let me tell you about a dinner party I was not invited to. I found out about it the way you find out about things in the age of social media, through a photograph that someone tagged on an account I followed of a gathering at my own rental property. The property at 14 Calloway Street. The two-bedroom apartment on the second floor of a building I had owned for 19 years that I had maintained and repaired and carried through 2 recessions and a roof replacement that cost me $11,000 out of pocket. The apartment where my son Derek and his wife Melissa had lived for 4 years, 11 months and 3 weeks. Rent-free. Every month for 4 years, 11 months and 3 weeks. That apartment had cost me the property taxes allocated to that unit, the insurance premium, the maintenance and repairs, the opportunity cost of not having it rented at market rate, which, in the neighbourhood where Calloway Street sits, had risen considerably in 4 years. My rough calculation, which I had done once and then not revisited, because revisiting it made me feel things I wasn't ready to feel, approximately $78,000 in foregone rent at conservative market rates plus costs, carried over the course of 4 years and 11 months. $78,000. And the dinner party. The photograph showed 8 people around my dining table, the table that came with the furnished apartment. My table, the one I had bought at an estate sale in 2009 and refinished myself over a weekend. 8 people. Wine glasses, plates, what appeared to be a roast chicken in the center of the table, and in the caption, Melissa had written, tagging several people, including mutual acquaintances of ours, the following: "Dinner with the funniest people we know. Someone asked if we own this place. LOL. No, we just have a very generous landlord. Emphasis on the generous." With a winking emoji. I stared at this caption for a long time. A very generous landlord. Emphasis on the generous. The emphasis, the laughing, crying emojis, the LOL, no. I put my phone down on the kitchen counter. I picked it up again and read it 3 more times to make sure I was reading what I was reading. I was. I put the phone down. I went to my desk. I opened the drawer where I keep the folder for 14 Calloway, the property records, the tax documents, the maintenance logs, the folder I had kept meticulously for 19 years, because I am a woman who keeps records, who was raised to keep records, who has built everything she has, through the discipline of knowing exactly where everything is and what it costs. I sat at my desk with the folder, and I thought about $78,000, and I thought about LOL, and I thought about the attorney I had consulted quietly 6 months earlier, not because I had been planning this, but because something had been building for a long time, and I had needed to understand my options before I needed to use them. I knew my options. I reached for the phone, not to call Derek, not to call Melissa, to call the attorney. My name is Gloria. I am 61 years old. I live in the first-floor unit of my own building at 14 Calloway Street, the ground-floor apartment which I took for myself when I bought the building 19 years ago, and which I have made into the specific personal home of a woman who knows what she wants her space to look like and has had the time and patience to make it that way. I was born in Savannah, Georgia. I moved north for college and never moved back except to visit, and the years have made the northern city as much home as Savannah ever was. My mother, who is still alive and sharp at 86, has forgiven me for this, mostly. I worked for 31 years as a hospital administrator, the specific, demanding, underappreciated work of keeping large institutions functioning, of managing budgets and personnel and systems, and the 10,000 things that go wrong in a hospital on any given day, and that someone has to handle. I retired 3 years ago early by most standards, because I had planned carefully and I had the means, and because 31 years was enough. The planning was real. I bought my first property, a small single-family house, at 32. I bought 14 Calloway Street at 42. The building with 2 units, which I have owned outright for the last 7 years since the mortgage was paid off. I have a retirement account, a healthy savings account, and the specific financial security of a woman who has never spent money she didn't have, and has never assumed that someone else would take care of her. I did not inherit this. Thomas, my ex-husband Derek's father, and I divorced when Derek was 11. Thomas moved to Portland and built a new life there, a life that included more contact with Derek than with me in Derek's adult years, which I made my peace with, the way you make peace with things that are true and cannot be changed. I built what I have. Myself. Let me tell you about Derek. Derek is 36. He is my only child. I want to be fair about this, because this story is not a story about a bad person. It is a story about choices. He is a person who has never fully made the connection between what things cost and who provides them. This is not entirely his fault. His upbringing split between two households after the divorce had a specific quality of two parents independently trying to give him what the other wasn't giving. The result, as is often the result in such situations, was a child who learned that if he waited, provision would appear, and that the appearance of provision did not require gratitude because it was simply the way things were. He is not cruel. He is not stupid. He has a good job in sales. He earns a decent income. He is capable of charm and warmth, and the specific intermittent attentiveness of a person who is engaging when engaged. He is also someone who had lived in my apartment for nearly 5 years without paying rent, and who had, as far as I could tell, ceased to think of this as an extraordinary arrangement somewhere around year 2. He married Melissa 4 years ago, 3 months before they moved into the Callaway Street apartment. Melissa is 34. She works in marketing. She is smart, attractive in the way of someone who has always known this about herself, and possessed of a quality that I noticed in the first year and told myself was confidence, and that I subsequently understood was something different from confidence. Entitlement is a word that gets used too broadly, so broadly that it has lost some of its precision. Let me try to be more precise. Melissa is a person who has, at every stage of her life, arrived at a situation and assessed it in terms of what she is owed by it. Not what she brings, what she is owed. The apartment at Callaway Street in Melissa's accounting was what she was owed by a mother-in-law with a rental property. I do not think she thought about it exactly in these terms. I think the entitlement is structural rather than conscious, not a deliberate calculation, but an orientation, a way of moving through the world in which the gifts of others are received as the natural order, and expressed gratitude would require noticing them as gifts. Melissa did not notice the apartment as a gift. She noticed it as a benefit to which she had a right by virtue of being Derek's wife. This is the difference. And the dinner party photograph with its LOL and its winking emoji and its very generous landlord. That photograph was the specific public expression of the private orientation I had been watching for 4 years and 11 months. Let me tell you how it built. The conversation about the apartment happened 3 months before Derek and Melissa's wedding. They were living separately at the time, Derek in a 1-bedroom he rented with a roommate, Melissa, in an apartment she shared with a friend. They were planning to move in together after the wedding and were having the specific stressful conversation of two people trying to find an apartment in a city where the rental market had become increasingly punishing. Derek called me on a Sunday afternoon. He said, "Mum, I need to ask you something." "Ask," I said. "The upstairs unit," he said. "At Callaway. Is there any possibility that Melissa and I could..." "Is it available?" I said. "Yes," he said. I thought about this. The upstairs unit had been rented for the previous 3 years to a couple who had just given notice they were buying a house in the suburbs, the standard story. I had been planning to repaint and relist it. Market rents had gone up. I had calculated I could rent it for $1,800 a month, possibly more, with the new kitchen fixtures I had been considering. I thought about Derek and Melissa, newly married, looking for an apartment in an expensive city. I thought about the kind of mother I wanted to be. "What are you thinking in terms of rent?" I said. A pause. "Well," Derek said, "we were hoping, obviously we'd pay something. We thought maybe we want to be able to save for a house. We thought maybe if we could pay below market for a year or 2. "How below market?" I said. Another pause. "Mum," he said with the specific tone he has used since childhood when he is about to ask for the full version of what he wants while presenting it as a negotiation. What if we didn't pay rent for the first year while we get settled, and then after that we'd revisit? I sat with this. A year, no rent, while they got settled. I thought about $1,800 a month, times 12. $21,600 in foregone rent for 1 year. I thought about what my mother would say. My mother, who is 86 and has strong opinions, would have said something brisk and specific. I did not say what my mother would have said. I said, "I'll think about it. Mum, I'll think about it, and I'll call you this week." I called him Wednesday. I said yes. Not to no rent indefinitely, I said yes to a specific arrangement. No rent for the first year, while they established themselves on the condition that Derek would handle minor maintenance issues in the building in exchange, and that we would revisit the arrangement at the end of 12 months with a realistic conversation about what came next. Derek said, "Thank you, Mum. Really. This is incredible." This is incredible, is the thing I held on to. The thing I played back to myself in the years that followed, when I needed to remind myself that this had started as something offered and received with genuine gratitude. They moved in 3 weeks after the wedding. They painted one of the bedrooms a colour Melissa chose without asking a dark green that I would not have chosen, and that required 2 coats of primer to cover later, but it was their home and I let it go. They arranged the furniture. They hung things on the walls. They had a housewarming party to which I was invited, and at which Melissa showed 3 people my kitchen fixtures and said she had found them, which was not precisely the history of the kitchen fixtures, but I let that go too. They settled in. The first year passed. The revisit conversation did not happen. I waited. A month past the 12 months. 2 months. I told myself they were getting established still. I told myself I would raise it when the time felt right. The time never felt right, because I kept choosing not to make it right, which is its own kind of choice, and which I am clear-eyed about. Derek's handling of minor maintenance was inconsistent. He did some things and did not do others, and when he didn't, I did them myself, and did not make a point of it. The arrangement, which had been specific, had become vague in the way of things that are not revisited. Year 2 began, and something else began too. The drift happened slowly, which is how drifts happen. In the first year, Derek and Melissa had been, if not effusively grateful, then at least aware. They had invited me to the housewarming. Melissa had sent me a text after the first month that said, "Loving the apartment, thank you, Gloria," the only time she used my name with a thank you attached. Derek called periodically. Not as often as I would have liked, but periodically. He asked how I was. He mentioned the apartment as something he was aware of receiving something that had been given. By year 2, the awareness had faded. Not in a single moment in the way of water that drops stone not by force, but by persistence. The apartment became their apartment, not my apartment in which they were living. The arrangement became the arrangement with no sense that it was an extraordinary one. Melissa began making requests. The first, could the bathroom fixtures be updated? The existing fixtures were dated. I updated them. Not because the request was unreasonable in itself, they were in fact dated, but because the request was made without any acknowledgement of what updating them cost or who was paying for it. The second, could the parking space be allocated exclusively to them rather than shared? I had been using half of the parking area for my own car. I reorganized to accommodate. The third, the downstairs hallway, the hallway that served both units, my unit and theirs. Melissa felt it was cluttered. She was referring to a coat rack I had placed there, and a small table with a lamp that I had owned for 15 years. Melissa feels the hallway could use a refresh, Derek said, in the specific way he has of delivering Melissa's positions as neutral observations. The coat rack and table are mine, I said. They've been there for 15 years. I know, he said. She has guests sometimes, and she thinks it looks a little she'd like the hallway to be cleaner. I removed the coat rack and the table. The lamp I moved inside my unit. I want to be precise about what was happening during this period. Each individual ask was in isolation manageable. The coat rack could move. The fixtures could be updated. The parking could be reorganized. But the accumulation had a quality. The accumulation said, "This is our apartment building, and we have preferences about it, and you will accommodate them." I noted this. I did not name it directly, which was a choice I was making, and which I have since reconsidered. Then somewhere in the middle of year 3, the tone changed. I am going to give you specific examples, because I think specific examples are what distinguishes "she was difficult" from "here is exactly what happened." Example 1. The Thanksgiving invitation. Year 3, October. I mentioned to Derek that I was hoping we might do Thanksgiving together at my apartment, as we had done the first 2 years of their tenancy. I had cooked both times. It had been, I thought, pleasant. Derek said he would check with Melissa. Melissa's response relayed by Derek. "We're thinking of doing our own thing this year. Just us and a few friends. It might be nice to have our own Thanksgiving tradition." Our own thing was in the apartment upstairs. The apartment they paid nothing for. Their own Thanksgiving tradition in the home they occupied at my expense. I had Thanksgiving alone. I told myself this was their right, which it was. I also told myself it was unkind, which it also was. Example 2. The maintenance call. Year 3, February. I had a plumber come to address a slow drain in the upstairs bathroom, a standard maintenance issue that I scheduled during a weekday morning. Melissa was working from home. When the plumber knocked, Melissa opened the door and said this was reported back to me by the plumber who had worked with me for 8 years, and who told me because he thought I should know. Finally, we've been asking about this for months. We had not been asking about it for months. The issue had been reported 2 weeks earlier. Finally. As though my maintenance of a property I owned and she occupied for free was a service being rendered tardily. The plumber, whose name is Ed, told me this with the specific expression of a man who has been in many people's homes and knows the difference between a tenant and a guest. Example 3. The comment at book club. Year 3, April. I have a book club. 8 women we have been meeting for 11 years, monthly rotating houses. One of the women, Patrice, who is one of my oldest friends, told me after a meeting at her house, where Melissa's name had come up, something that Melissa had apparently said at a social event they had both attended. Melissa had described our arrangement at a dinner party in front of people Patrice knew as follows. "Derek's mum has this apartment she lets us use. It's fine. It's not exactly what we'd choose if we were picking, but it works for now." Not exactly what we'd choose. The apartment she and Derek occupied for free, which included a newly renovated kitchen and updated bathroom fixtures paid for by me, in a neighborhood that had become increasingly desirable, at a market rate that had risen to approximately $2,200 per month by year 3. Not exactly what we'd choose if we were picking. I received this from Patrice with the specific calm of a person who has been waiting for something to become undeniable and who has now watched it become undeniable. "Thank you for telling me," I said. "I thought you should know," Patrice said. "I did," I said. Example 4. The party. Year 4, June. Derek and Melissa hosted a party at the apartment, not the dinner party I described at the beginning that was later. This was a summer party outdoor in the small backyard that belongs to the building which both units have access to. I was not invited. I became aware of the party because it was loud enough that I could hear it clearly in my own unit below. Music voices the specific sound of people having a good time in a space I owned while I sat in my apartment beneath them. I did not go upstairs. I did not say anything. I closed my windows. I sat with the specific thing I was feeling. Not anger, not yet. The thing that precedes anger, the thing that is a cooler and more precise cousin of anger, the thing that makes assessments. I made assessments. I thought about $1,800 a month, the market rate when they moved in. $2,200 a month by now, conservatively. 48 months of occupancy. calculated against what I had received, which was nothing, plus the cost of the fixtures, the parking reorganization, the coat rack and the table, and the lamp I had moved inside my own home. I thought about not exactly what we'd choose. I thought about finally to the plumber. I thought about Thanksgiving. I thought about a very generous landlord, which was still 6 months in the future, but which was coming, though I didn't know the specific form it would take. I sat with all of this, and I did something I had not done before I called an attorney. Not to initiate anything, to understand, to know my options. The attorney's name was Karen Webb. She specialized in property law. She had a direct manner that I appreciated and a thorough knowledge of landlord-tenant law in our state that I appreciated more. I told her my situation. She asked clarifying questions. She explained my options. She said, "You have a tenant without a lease, which in our state creates a month-to-month tenancy by default after a period of occupancy. You have the right to issue a 60-day notice to vacate without cause. The notice has to be written and delivered properly, and you have to follow the procedure precisely, but your rights here are clear." 60 days, I said. 60 days, she said. And if I wanted to keep the option open to have the information and not use it yet. "Then you call me when you're ready," she said. "The option doesn't expire." I thanked her. I paid her consultation fee. I filed her number in my phone under K, where I keep things I might need. And I went home. And the months continued. And 6 months later there was a dinner party. And there was a photograph. And there was a caption. LOL. No, we just have a very generous landlord. Emphasis on the generous. I put the phone down. I went to my desk. I opened the Calloway Street folder. I picked up the phone and called Karen Webb. The call to Karen Webb was on a Thursday. I made it calmly. I want you to know this not performing calm, actually calm. The calm of a person who has been building toward a decision for 6 months and who has now received the final piece of information that settles it. "Karen," I said, "I'm ready." She knew immediately what I meant. "The 60-day notice," she said. "Yes," I said. "All right," she said. "I'll prepare the paperwork. It needs to be delivered in writing. Certified mail is the standard approach. Do you have their names on file?" I had their names on file. I had everything on file. "Derek James Holloway and Melissa Ann Holloway," I said. "Unit 214, Calloway Street." "I'll have the document ready Monday," she said. "You can come by to review and sign, and we'll send it certified." "Thank you," I said. "Gloria?" She said she had started using my first name after the consultation 6 months ago, the way attorneys do when they like you. "Are you sure this is your son?" "He is," I said. "Yes." A brief pause. "All right," she said. "Monday." I put the phone down. I opened a spreadsheet on my computer. The spreadsheet I had created 6 months earlier after the first call with Karen. The one I had updated monthly since. I want to share these numbers with you. Not to make you angry on my behalf, though if you are angry on my behalf, that is reasonable. But because numbers are what make the abstract specific, and I believe in specificity. The apartment at 14 Calloway Street, Unit 2, market rent at time of occupancy, January 4 years and 11 months ago, $1.800 per month. Current market rent after neighborhood appreciation and the improvements I had made, $2.300 per month. I used a graduated rate in my spreadsheet, not the current rate for all 59 months, which would overstate it, but the actual market rate in each year of occupancy which I had researched. Year 1, 12 months, $1.800 month equal sign, $21.600. Year 2, 12 months, $1.950 month equal sign, $23.400. Year 3, 12 months, $2.100 month equal sign, $25.200. Year 4, 12 months, $2.250 month equal sign, $27.000. Year 5, partial 11 months to notice estimated $2.300 month equal sign, $25.300. Prorated. Total foregone rent, approximately $122, $122,500, plus the kitchen fixtures, $4,200, plus the bathroom fixtures, $2,800, plus miscellaneous maintenance and improvements during their tenancy, approximately $3,100. Total value provided approximately $132,600. $132,600. Over 4 years, 11 months, and 3 weeks. I looked at this number for a long time. Then I looked at the screenshot I had taken of Melissa's Instagram caption. LOL. No, we just have a very generous landlord. Emphasis on the generous. I thought about the coat rack and the table and the lamp. I thought about, finally, to Ed the plumber. I thought about not exactly what we'd choose if we were picking. I thought about eating Thanksgiving alone. I closed the spreadsheet. Monday I went to Karen's office. I reviewed the document. I signed. The certified letter was sent the following Tuesday. I want to tell you what the letter said. Not the full legal text. Property law notices have a specific language that is not interesting to read, but the substance of it. It was a notice to vacate. 60-day notice, as required by law. It stated that the tenancy at Unit 214 Callaway Street, held by Derek James Holloway and Melissa Ann Holloway, was being terminated at the end of the 60-day notice period. It stated the specific date by which the unit was to be vacated vacant and returned to the landlord in the condition in which it was received, reasonable wear and tear accepted. It was signed Gloria Ann Holloway, property owner. It was sent certified mail return receipt, requested as Karen had advised. It arrived at the upstairs apartment on a Thursday. Derek called me that same Thursday, 40 minutes after the postal service tracking showed delivery. I let it ring. He called again. I let it ring again. He texted, "Mum, call me." I texted back, "I'll call you Sunday." He called Sunday. I answered. He said, "What is this?" "It's a notice to vacate," I said. "I know what it is," he said. The specific flatness of someone who knows what something is and cannot believe it is what it is. "Why?" "Because I've decided to make other arrangements for the unit," I said. "I need 60 days' notice by law, which is what I've given you." "Other arrangements," he said. "I'm going to rent it at market rate," I said. A long silence. "Mum," he said. "We live there. You can't just—" "I am the owner of the property," I said. "I have followed the law precisely. You have 60 days to find alternative housing." "This is because of Melissa's post," he said. "Derek," I said, "I need you to understand something. The Instagram post was one thing in a long sequence of things. It was not the cause. It was the last piece of information I needed to make a decision I had been considering for some time." "What sequence of things?" he said. "We can discuss this when you're less reactive and I'm less—" I paused. "When we can have the conversation properly. Right now the legal situation is what it is. You have 60 days. "Mum," he said, and his voice changed into the tone he has used since he was 9 years old, when he is genuinely frightened. "Where are we supposed to go? We haven't been saving. We don't have a security deposit saved. We don't have first and last month. The market is Mum." I sat with this. I felt it, the pull of it, the genuine distress in his voice, the 9-year-old underneath it. I also thought about $78,000, $132,600, the actual number I had calculated. "You have 60 days, I said. "That is more time than most people get. I suggest you start looking immediately." I heard him exhale. Is there anything I can say?" he said. "At this point," I said, "there is not." He hung up. I sat with the phone in my hand. My mother would have approved of that call. I was not certain I approved of it. But I had made it. And it was done. Melissa called me on Monday, 2 days after Derek's Sunday call. She had, I assumed, spent those 2 days deciding on her approach, which was itself information. The calculation that goes into how you present yourself in a difficult situation tells you something about how the person has understood the situation. What she had calculated was outrage. "Gloria," she said when I answered. The use of my name without any prefix, not Mom, as Derek sometimes used, not Miss Holloway, was itself a signal. The tone of someone speaking to a peer they are in conflict with, not a family member they are appealing to. "Melissa," I said. "I need you to explain what you're doing," she said. "Because what you're doing it's honestly shocking. We live there. We've built our life there. You can't just send a letter and expect us to in 60 days. That's not reasonable." 60 days is the legal requirement, I said. "I have met it." "The legal requirement," she said, with the specific contempt that people use when accuracy is being used in ways they find inconvenient. "You're our family. You're Derek's mother. We're not a legal arrangement." "You are in fact a legal arrangement," I said. "You are tenants. You have been tenants for nearly 5 years. The arrangement has been informal, which is something I allowed, but it is a legal tenancy regardless of its informality." "We haven't been paying rent," she said, as though this were an argument in her favour. "I know," I said. "So we're not like regular tenants." "You're correct that you're not like regular tenants," I said. "Regular tenants pay rent." A silence. That's not," she started. Tried again. "We have an agreement with you, a family agreement. You offered us the apartment." "I offered you the apartment for 1 year," I said. "At the end of that year, we were supposed to revisit the arrangement. We never did." "You never brought it up," she said. "That's true," I said. "I didn't. That was a mistake on my part. I'm correcting it now." "By kicking us out," she said. "By giving you 60 days' notice as required by law to make alternative arrangements," I said. "Yes." "This is because of the Instagram post," she said. "Melissa," I said. "The Instagram post was not the cause of this decision. It was the confirmation of something I had been observing for some time." "What had you been observing?" she said. Not the question of someone who genuinely wants to know the question of someone who is preparing to dispute whatever answer comes. I thought about whether to answer it, about whether the conversation I had wanted to have for 2 years, the honest conversation about what the arrangement had become and what I had observed in it, was available right now in this form, with this energy in the room. It was not. "I think this conversation would be more productive in person," I said. "If you and Derek would like to come downstairs this week, I'm willing to have it." "I don't want to come downstairs," she said. "I want you to take back the notice." "I won't be doing that," I said. "Then what's the point of the conversation?" "The point," I said, "is that you are my son's wife, and he is my son, and we are going to have to find a way to be in each other's lives after this, and having the conversation now, rather than not having it, seems like the better choice for everyone." A long pause. "I'll talk to Derek," she said. She hung up. They did not come downstairs that week, or the following week. The conversation happened at week 4 of the 60 days, and it happened because Derek came alone. Derek came downstairs on a Sunday morning, not with Melissa. Without her, which told me something I filed away. He knocked. I let him in. I made coffee. We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where we had eaten many dinners over the years, where he had sat as a teenager on visits from his father's house, where I had fed him and talked to him, and been his mother in the specific imperfect way I had been his mother. He looked tired. "I've been looking at apartments," he said. "Good," I said. "It's the market is difficult," he said. "We don't have savings for a deposit. He stopped. He put his coffee cup down. "Mum," he said, "I need to understand what happened, not the Instagram post. I know that was the last thing. I need to understand what actually happened from your side, because I thought things were okay between us." I looked at my son, 36 years old, tired, sitting at my table, genuinely asking, I believed, not performing a question, actually asking. "All right," I said. I told him. I told him about year 2 and the drift. I told him about the fixture requests made without acknowledgement. I told him about the parking, the hallway, the coat rack. I told him what Ed the plumber had told me about finally. I told him about Thanksgiving. I told him what Patrice had told me, what Melissa had said at the dinner party, not exactly what we'd choose if we were picking. I watched his face when I said this. He closed his eyes briefly. She said that, he said. Patrice heard it directly, I said. He was quiet. And the party, I said. In the backyard, in June, that you didn't invite me to. That was, he started. I'm not asking you to justify it, I said. I'm telling you how it accumulated. He nodded slowly. And then the Instagram post, I said, which was Melissa describing our arrangement to her followers, including people who know both of us, as something comedic, a joke. The punchline being that she has a generous landlord with an emphasis like generosity is something slightly ridiculous. Like being taken advantage of is funny. Silence. She didn't mean, he started. Derek, I said, quietly. Please don't tell me what she meant. I can see what she said. I've been watching what she does for 4 years. I don't need the translation. He looked at the table. Okay, he said. I want to tell you something, I said. Not about the apartment, about the numbers. I opened my laptop. I turned it so he could see the spreadsheet. I walked him through it. The years, the market rates, the foregone rent, the fixtures, the maintenance, the total. He read the numbers. He was quiet for a long time. 132,000, he said, almost to himself. Approximately, I said. Mum, he said, I'm not telling you this to make you feel bad about receiving it, I said. I gave it willingly. Every month I made a choice to not collect rent, and that was my choice, and I don't regret it in the abstract. What I regret is what it became. What did it become? He said. Something you stopped seeing, I said. Something that wasn't a gift anymore because gifts require seeing the giver. It became the arrangement, the way things were, the thing that was there and didn't require your attention. He was looking at the spreadsheet. And Melissa's post made it. It made you see that she was laughing at it, he said. Yes, I said. She wasn't, he started, stopped himself. Say it, I said. She wasn't laughing at you, he said. I don't think she was laughing at you. I think she was... He searched. I think she was performing something for her followers, the we have it good performance. I don't think she thought about how it would land. Derek, I said. In 4 years, has Melissa expressed gratitude to me for this apartment, not to you, to me? He thought about it. His silence was the answer. Once, I said. In a text in the first month. That was the last time. He looked at his hands. I haven't either, he said quietly. Have I? No, I said. Not in a long time. We sat with this. I'm sorry, he said. I know, I said. Is the notice the end of this conversation? Or is there... He stopped. The notice stands, I said. That isn't negotiable. What is negotiable is what we are to each other after you move out. That depends on what you do with this conversation. What do I need to do? He said. I need you to understand what I just told you, I said. Not apologize once and move on. Actually understand it. And I need you to have a conversation with Melissa about it that isn't about defending her or defending the situation. A real conversation. He nodded. I'll try, he said. Try harder than you have been, I said. He looked at me. Okay, he said. Okay, Mum. The 60 days were not comfortable. I want to be honest about this. The decision was right, and the execution was correct, and the 60 days were also not comfortable. I live below them. I hear footsteps. I hear voices. I know when they come and go. For 60 days I lived below a son and daughter-in-law who were packing and searching and dealing with the consequence of an arrangement they had taken for granted. Some of that was hard to hear. Not hard enough to change what I had done, but hard. On the 17th day, Melissa came downstairs. She knocked. I opened the door. She stood in the hallway with the specific posture of someone who has decided to do something difficult and has committed to doing it before the commitment wavers. "Can I come in?" she said. "Yes," I said. She came in. She sat on the sofa. She did not look entirely comfortable, which was appropriate. "Derek told me about the conversation you had," she said. The numbers. Yes, I said. $132,000, she said. Approximately, I said. She was quiet for a moment. I knew we weren't paying rent, she said. I knew that. I didn't calculate what that meant. It was the way things were. Yes, I said. That's not an excuse, she said. No, I said. It isn't. She looked at her hands in her lap. The Instagram post, she said. I want to explain it, and I also know that explaining it is probably not useful. Try, I said. I was performing something for my followers, she said. The "We're lucky, life is good" performance. I wasn't thinking about you seeing it. I wasn't thinking about you at all. Which is, I understand now that that's the problem, not just the post. The not thinking about you at all. She said this with a precision that surprised me. The not thinking about you at all, I repeated. Yes, she said. For a long time I haven't. You've been in the background. Someone who is there and provides things and doesn't require... She stopped. I treated you like infrastructure, she said. I know that's an ugly thing to say, but I think it's accurate. I sat with infrastructure. It was precise. More precise than I had expected from Melissa, who I had understood as someone who does not often say the true ugly thing about herself. Thank you for saying that, I said. I'm sorry, she said. For the post, for the way I've been, for the plumber. Derek told you about the plumber, I said. Yes, she said. I nodded. Melissa, I said. I want to ask you something. Okay, she said. Why? I said. Not why did you say those things? I understand how those things happen, not thinking performing infrastructure. I understand the mechanism, but why, in 4 years, did it never occur to you to think about me, to see me as a person in the situation rather than the situation itself? She looked at me for a long moment. I think, she started, I think I didn't want to see it. Because if I saw it, if I really understood what you were doing and what it cost, I would have to feel something about it that would be uncomfortable. I would have to feel grateful. Really grateful, not just going through the motions of it. And real gratitude requires acknowledging that you needed something and someone gave it to you, and that changes the power dynamic in a way that She stopped. That you found uncomfortable, I said. Yes, she said. I found it uncomfortable to be in that position, so I stopped seeing the position. This was honest. More honest than I had expected. More honest than her initial call. More honest than most people manage about themselves in difficult conversations. I understand, I said. It doesn't fix it, she said. No, I said, but it's something to start from. They moved out on day 58. They did not leave the apartment in the condition in which they had received it. There was the dark green bedroom that had never been repainted despite my requests, and a mark on the kitchen wall that had not been there before, and the bathroom mirror had a crack in one corner. I documented everything. Karen had advised me to document. I deducted from the security deposit there was no security deposit, which was another consequence of the informal arrangement, but Karen helped me send a formal accounting letter itemizing the costs of returning the apartment to its original condition. Derek paid it. He paid it without arguing. This was something. I listed the apartment the day they moved out. Not in revenge, or not only. I had been subsidizing the unit for nearly 5 years, and I needed the income to be what it should be. My retirement was comfortable, but not so comfortable that I could continue carrying a unit at 0 income indefinitely. The listing went up on a Friday. By Sunday, I had 14 inquiries. By Wednesday, I had shown it 4 times. By the following Monday, I had signed a lease. The new tenants, a couple in their late 20s. Both work in healthcare. She is a physical therapist. He is a hospital administrator. They came to the showing with a list of questions that told me they were serious and thoughtful. They were approved on all financial criteria. They offered to pay first, last, and security deposit up front, which they did, and they signed a 12-month lease at market rate. $2,300 per month. $2,300. The first month, when the deposit cleared and the first month's rent arrived in my account, I sat at my desk and looked at the number for a long time, not in satisfaction, not exactly. In the specific feeling of a person who has been carrying something for a long time and has set it down and is now assessing what their arms feel like without the weight. Lighter. They felt lighter. The new tenants sent me a thank you note after the first week, a handwritten card thanking me for the renovated kitchen and the neighbourhood and the light in the main bedroom. The light in the main bedroom, the same light that had been there for 19 years that Melissa had lived under for 5 of them and never mentioned. I put the card on my refrigerator. It is still there. Derek and Melissa found an apartment. Not easily. The market was what it was, and they did not have savings for a deposit because they had been living rent-free for 5 years and had not built savings with the money they were not spending on rent, which is itself a fact I have sat with and which I will address later. They borrowed money for the deposit from Thomas Derek's father, my ex-husband in Portland. Thomas called me after this happened. We are cordial, Thomas and I, in the way of 2 people who have been divorced for 25 years and who share a child and who have in the intervening decades become something close to civil friends. He told me what happened, Thomas said. I know, I said. Was it the right call? He said. Yes, I said. He's your son, he said. He is, I said. And he is 36 years old, and he has a good job, and he lived in my apartment for nearly 5 years, at no cost, and did not build a savings account with the money he wasn't spending on rent. That is not a circumstance I was going to continue facilitating. Thomas was quiet for a moment. Fair, he said. Fair enough. Thomas and I have a specific limited understanding of each other that has over 25 years become something I value. Derek paid Thomas back over 8 months. He called me regularly during those 8 months. Not as often as I would have liked, but more than he had called when he was living upstairs and the relationship had been built into the infrastructure of shared space. He called from a distance, the necessary distance of 2 people who are not in the same building and who have to make the choice to maintain contact rather than letting proximity do the maintenance for them. The calls were different. In the upstairs apartment when Derek had called it, had usually been to report something, a maintenance issue, a schedule question, the occasional family information exchange. The calls were functional. The new calls were not always functional. Sometimes he called just to talk. About his week, about work, about Melissa, about things that were happening in his life. Not always. He had not become a daily caller, but sometimes. I received these calls. About 4 months after the move, Derek said in the middle of a call about something else entirely. Mum, I want to say something. Go ahead, I said. I've been thinking about the spreadsheet, he said. About the numbers, about what you carried for 5 years. And I want to say I don't have the words for it exactly. But I want you to know that I see it now. What you were doing. What it cost. I should have seen it then. And I didn't. And I'm sorry. I sat with this. Thank you, I said. I'm going to pay you back, he said. Not the whole thing, I know I can't. But I'm starting a savings account, specifically for that. I'll contribute to it monthly, and whatever I have in 10 years I'll give to you. It won't be the whole amount, but it'll be something. I did not know what to say immediately. Not because the offer resolved everything it didn't, and an account 10 years from now wouldn't restore what the years had been, but because it was the gesture of a person who had finally genuinely understood what had happened and was trying to respond to it in a way that was real rather than verbal. Derek, I said, keep the money. Save it for yourself. Save it for a house. Save it for your children someday. What I need from you is not money. What do you need? He said. This, I said. The call, the seeing, the not forgetting. I won't forget, he said. I believed him. I do not know whether to believe Melissa. I want to be honest about this. Melissa has been different since the move, more present in the ways that are available to a daughter-in-law who does not live in your building, more aware in the way of someone who has had an uncomfortable experience and has processed some of it honestly. The conversation in my living room on the 17th day. I treated you like infrastructure was real. I believe it was real. But character is pattern, and Melissa's pattern is long. What I know is that I am watching. Not anxiously, I am not the person I was when I was managing and accommodating and moving lamp tables inside my own home. I am watching clearly without the pressure of ongoing subsidy distorting what I see. I can see clearly now. What I see at 1 year is improvement. Real improvement, not performance. Not enough to fully trust, but enough to continue. That is where we are. I want to tell you the real things I learned. Not the narrative convenient things. The actual things. The first thing, the arrangement was a mistake from the beginning. Not the generosity. The informality. What I should have done, what I would tell anyone in a similar position to do, is put the arrangement in writing. A formal lease, even between family, even at below market or no rent, specifies terms, what the duration is, what the expectations are, when and how it will be revisited, what the exit conditions are. A written agreement does 2 things. It protects the owner legally, and it does something more important. It signals to the recipient that the arrangement is a defined thing, with defined terms, not an indefinite gift that can expand and become assumed. Without the written agreement, my generosity had no edges, and something without edges becomes over time shapeless. It becomes the background, infrastructure. Write it down, always, even for family, especially for family. The second thing, I waited too long. The 12-month revisit conversation that never happened, that was the first failure of clarity. I should have had it. Not aggressively, not as a threat, but as the thing I had said we would do. 12 months, then a conversation. Instead, I let the 12 months pass without a word, and then 6 more months, and then another year, and each silent month was an implicit renewal of the terms as they had become, rather than as they had been offered. The revisit conversation at 12 months would have changed everything. It would have reset the frame. It would have required Derek and Melissa to consciously decide whether they wanted to continue the arrangement and on what terms, rather than simply continuing it because nothing stopped it. Clarity early is less painful than clarity late. I learned this again. I keep learning this lesson from different directions. The third thing, the spreadsheet. I should have shown it to Derek sooner. Not as a weapon, not as guilt, but as information. When I built that spreadsheet and looked at the numbers for the first time 6 months before the eviction notice, I was shocked by them. Not because I hadn't known abstractly what the arrangement cost, but because the spreadsheet made it specific in a way that abstract knowledge doesn't. Derek was shocked by the spreadsheet too. He had known he wasn't paying rent. He had not apparently thought about what that meant in dollar terms over time. The human capacity to not think about what things cost when you are not the one paying is remarkable and real, and it operates on otherwise intelligent people. Specificity pierces that capacity. I should have been specific sooner. The fourth thing is something I want to say to any parent who is in the position I was in, who is providing something significant to an adult child, and who has noticed that the providing has stopped being received as a gift and started being received as a given. Say something. Not necessarily what I did. I understand that the eviction notice is a nuclear option, and that not every situation calls for nuclear options. But say something. Have the conversation before the Instagram post. Have the conversation before the finally to the plumber. Have the conversation when you notice the drift beginning. I want to check in about our arrangement. I want to make sure we're both still clear on what it is and what it isn't. I want to feel appreciated for what I'm providing, and I haven't been feeling that, and I need us to talk about it. That conversation. Direct, specific, before the spreadsheet is necessary. The love you give your adult children does not require them to be grateful. But the generosity you extend, the significant material financial generosity of a parent providing substantial support to an adult child, that generosity requires acknowledgement, not performance of gratitude, real acknowledgement. If the acknowledgement is not there, say so. If saying so doesn't change it, you have your information, and you can decide what to do with it. The fifth thing is about the new tenants, the handwritten card, the thanks for the light in the main bedroom. I have thought about that card many times in the year since the eviction notice, about what it felt like to receive it, the specific, small, uncomplicated warmth of having something noticed and appreciated by someone with no obligation to notice or appreciate it. The new tenants pay $2,300 a month, and they sent me a handwritten thank you note for the light. Derek and Melissa paid nothing and never thanked me for anything after the first month. This is not a simple arithmetic, I know that. The relationship between a parent and a child is not the relationship between a landlord and a tenant, and gratitude cannot be purchased, and the lack of it should not always cost someone what it cost Derek and Melissa. But the comparison stays with me. The handwritten card stays with me. It taught me something about what I had been hungry for, not money, not formal acknowledgement, not even the specific words, thank you. The hunger was for being seen, for having what I provided noticed by the people I was providing it to. The new tenants see me. I am 61 years old, and I live on the first floor of my building, and I drink my coffee in the morning, and I tend the small garden in the backyard that I planted when I bought the building 19 years ago. I am seen. It is enough. And now I want to ask you something, because this story is on one level about an eviction, and on another level it is about something much more common and much more specific to the relationship between parents and adult children. The first question, what would you have done? Not at the end, at the beginning. At the 12-month mark, when the revisit conversation didn't happen, what would you have done? Some of you would have had the conversation. You are the people who have learned, perhaps through experience similar to mine, that clarity early is less painful than clarity late. I respect this. I wish I had been this person. Some of you would have done what I did, let it go. Let the months pass, told yourself it was fine, and the relationship was more important than the money, and the discomfort of the conversation was more than the discomfort of the silence. And some of you are in this situation right now. You are providing something significant to an adult child or a family member, housing money, time, labor, ongoing practical support. And you have noticed, perhaps recently, perhaps a while ago, that it is no longer being received as what it is, that it has become infrastructure, background, the way things are. And you are managing that observation rather than acting on it. I want to say to those of you in this situation, the conversation is available. Right now, today, before the spreadsheet is necessary and before the certified letter is drafted. The conversation that says, I want to talk about our arrangement. I love you. I am glad to have been able to help. I also need you to see what you're receiving and who is giving it. Can we talk about that? That conversation. Today. Before the photograph. The second question was the eviction too much? I know people will disagree about this. Some of you will say absolutely right. She had carried it long enough and had been disrespected openly and the legal action was entirely warranted. Some of you will say too far. He's your son. You could have had the conversation and given them the chance to change before taking legal action. I have a response to the second view. I had been watching the drift for 2 years. I had watched the adjustment requests made without acknowledgement. The Thanksgiving alone, the party I wasn't invited to, the finally to the plumber, the not exactly what we'd choose. I had seen the pattern across 2 years before the Instagram post. The Instagram post was not the cause, it was the confirmation. And the confirmation told me that what I was seeing was not a phase or a temporary lapse, but an established orientation. Melissa had described our arrangement publicly to people who know both of us as a joke. That takes a certain settled comfort with a certain view of things. The conversation, the hypothetical conversation where I said, I need you to see what you're receiving, was available before the Instagram post. After it, I didn't believe it would produce a different outcome than 2 years of observed behavior had produced. So I took a different action. Was it too much? I don't think so. But I hold the question. The third question is for the people who recognize themselves in Derek or Melissa. Not necessarily in this situation, but in the pattern. Have you been the recipient of significant generosity from someone you love and stopped seeing it? Have you let a gift become an assumption? Have you posted the LOL caption, not about a rent-free apartment, but about something else? A favor repeatedly given, a resource regularly provided, a person consistently present, who has become so consistently present that their presence itself has become background. If you have, and most of us have, in some form, I want to offer you the thing I needed Derek and Melissa to do, and that I am not certain either of them did fully go back and see it. See the gift. See the giver. See what it cost them to give it not in money only, but in time and attention and the specific labor of ongoing generosity. See it. And then do the thing that seeing requires. Say thank you. Not once. Not in response to a certified letter. Not because you have been asked. Because the seeing is happening and the seeing requires an expression. Say thank you to the people in your life who have been providing consistently and quietly the things that have become your infrastructure. Before they stop. Leave me a comment. Tell me about the arrangements in your life, the ones you give and the ones you receive. Tell me if you have been in my position, or in Derek's, or in Melissa's. Tell me what you would have done at month 12. Tell me about the thank you note you sent, or the one you should have sent. I read every comment. I'm Gloria. I am 61 years old. I live on the first floor of 14 Calloway Street. Upstairs in Unit 2. There are 2 people who sent me a handwritten card thanking me for the light. The card is on my refrigerator. Every morning when I make my coffee, I see it. Every morning I am glad I made the call.